Morning, everybody. Very nice to see everybody on this nice wintry morning, at least wintry here in the Bay Area. Little rain this morning, very cold as it's been all week. And so what better way to go into the day than having a nice warm Cliff tea? So this is the Wondrous session today. Cliff tea is what we're going to focus on over this next 3 weeks. Before I talk about what you're going to leave with over these next 3 weeks, let's talk a little bit about what's occurred here this week. We still have another order en route, not a lot of teas, but a few teas. So we should be getting that within the next week or two. And again, our strategy, our overall strategy with building community here, with building long-term relationships in China at every level, farmer, scientists, tea industry, government officials, is paying off as we're getting everything that we order expeditiously. So it's been a really, really good year from that perspective. We have all the new teas that are currently in the shop that we're going to put on the board are on the board. We have a couple that the quantity was so small, we probably won't put those on the board. But we're really set. They're not on the board in the official way, by the way. They're posted it on the board. In other words, there's a bunch of post-its in as placeholders. We'll eventually get this all in a formal way, but at least you have access to these right now. Outside of that, we've had during this holiday season, it's been wonderful because we've had young people return from college and come in and talk about their adventures. That's been really, really wonderful. We've had all of you who've stopped into the shop. We've had some of you who've come back from other places where you moved to and visited. Just a really happy feeling, and we've really, really been happy to visit with you. We thank all of those who've already re-upped for the annual memberships. We are looking forward to a big year with that as well. So let's go ahead and step into Cliff tea. But you know what? Maybe we should position ourselves first. Now, for those of you who got up after 8:15, which I know is none of you, all of you are early risers, but should there have been one or two that slept in your email box, you have two maps. One map is a map of China and pretty self-explanatory. The white areas, no tea. The green areas, tea is grown. So this gives you a general idea of where in China tea is grown. Now, on that map, I'd like you to look at the right, let's say this correctly, at the border of the ocean areas. So you've got Fujian province right next to the Pacific Ocean. And if you look at the top of Fujian province, slightly to the left, you'll see Jiangxi province. The Wuyi mountains abut Jiangxi province, right there. Now, that gives you one sort of generalized visual. Let's zoom in. Let's look at the second map, which is map of Fujian province alone. And you'll see right at the top, the northernmost point of Fujian province. Slightly to the left, there's something called Wuyi Mountains. And it's right next to Jiangxi. So this is the area we're going to be talking about today. And this is the area where Cliff tea comes from. Remembering, of course, that Fujian province is rich in tea history, rich in tea heritage. They do all sorts of teas there. Early on, they were very, very famous for their green teas. So 1600s, extremely famous for their green teas all over the province, but especially from the Wuyi area, because that minerality that comes through in the cliff teas also came through in the green teas. It's the terroir, it's the weather. It has also been famous over the years for white tea. White tea, we remember, was probably invented or created in the 1800s. And certainly, for sure, there's three areas: Zhenghe, Jinyang, and Fuding. Three areas were white tea. And Fuding's on the coast. And if you go to the left from Fuding, slightly south, you'll see a place called Nanping. So Zhenghe is in that area. Jinyang is between the two. Then Fujian has also been extremely famous for red teas and the fine craft of doing red teas. They didn't really start doing red teas, to the best of our historical knowledge, until the late 1600s. If you want an exact date, I can't give it to you. And anybody who self-proclaims that they can give it to you would be amazing. And all you have to do is ask them, where's the proof? And then that will fall apart. In addition to the red teas and the white teas and the cliff teas, you have the southern Wulong teas, which are lighter, be characterized by iron goddess, golden osmanthus. Oh, you better remember those two names because I'm going to come back to them. And their inherent terroir is different than the terroir in the Wuyi Mountains. So you've got that going on as well. So Fujian, long history of tea, rich history of tea, and the Wuyi Mountains is the richest history of tea. So when did Wuyi, Wulong cliff teas come into existence? And again, if somebody gives you an exact date, they're lying. Well, they may not be lying. It's just like winning the lottery. Maybe they guessed it, but it's statistically like that if they tell you, oh, well, it started in 1635. I always tell you a range. So the range is somewhere from the end of the 1500s up to about 1644. That's the range when the cliff teas really started and were invented. And why did a farmer one morning wake up and say to himself, because primarily at that time it was mostly men, so it wouldn't have been say to herself, okay, these green teas are pretty good, but they're bland. Now that's an unfair characterization, of course, as you green tea drinkers know, but the farmer really meant to say, we need some more variety. And so went out and invented cliff tea. Now, of course, that's ridiculous. That's not what happened. What happened, more likely than not, and you have recent Chinese research, scientific historical research, which says the following. It says between the end of the 1500s and the start of the Qing dynasty, around 1644, what happened was that the Qing dynasty was fighting its way to take over China at that time. And in that fight, they sent troops south through Jiangxi, and the best way to enter Fujian was this pass over Jiangxi, and that comes straight down into the Wuyi Mountain area. Farmers, it is alleged, were doing their farming, they'd done a pick, but they hadn't really gotten deep into the processing. They knew soldiers were coming. They ran away because when soldiers come to a town at those times, terrible consequences. Soldiers took whatever they wanted. And then after the soldiers left, they came back, and the tea that they had picked and started to process had started to oxidize. So remembering, green tea is unoxidized. So pre-cliff tea, everybody was doing unoxidized. How do we keep the tea unoxidized? We apply heat to it. We denature the oxidation enzyme. So if you don't apply heat, what happens? It starts to oxidize, especially after the tea leaves are bruised, because just like a banana, you peel that skin back, what happens? The banana turns brown. Why? Because the oxidation enzyme attracts the oxygen molecule and creates a different compound on the skin of the banana. The same with tea leaves. It's a very simple principle, and it happens throughout nature all the time. So oxidation occurred, peasants come back. Oh no, this isn't green anymore. It's ugly, red, reddish green, not good. What are we going to do with this? This is our livelihood. So they said, okay, let's figure out how we can make this taste good. And so over a period of time, they experimented. They didn't throw this stuff away, these tea leaves away. They experimented and eventually came to this process of doing cliff tea. And the process of doing cliff tea was well established by the start of the Qing dynasty in 1644. So they had already experimented successfully. And this was the only place in China that was doing oolong. Gradually, that technique spread south. Peasants came from the south, farmers, saw the technique, took it back to the south, but they changed it because the technique in the Wuyi Mountains was enormously complicated. Plus the terroir, completely different. Volcanic soil, 180, 190 days of fog, temperate, just a completely different terroir than in the south, where humid, hot, unpleasant some days, just different. So the result was different. Plus the hybrids in the south were different than what is in the Wuyi Mountains. So we're starting this journey of 3 cliff teas over the next 3 weeks. What is it you're going to be able to take away after these 3 weeks? Well, first off, you'll know what a cliff tea is. Second off, you'll understand the processing to get to a cliff tea. You'll understand where other Wulongs are grown and why they're different. You'll also understand, because next week we're going to put on our scientific hat. We're going to put on our hat of 18-syllable words so that we can throw those around and impress our friends and neighbors. That's what we're going to do next week. Not this week, though. This week, we're going to talk about the varietal you're having today, the hybridization of this varietal. We're going to talk about naming conventions within the Wuyi Mountains. So you'll take that away from today. By the end of this 3rd week, you know what? I always love to talk about alleged health benefits. So at the end of the 3rd week, I'll think, let's see, does this make you live 10,000 years more in great shape? I'll see if I can find some literature to support that, and I'll share that with you if it exists. Whatever exists, I'll share it with you in that 3rd week. So let's start right now on this wondrous journey that we're about to have and talk about, first off, this particular variety. So I ask you this. This is a rhetorical question, so you need not answer. Is Wondrous a varietal that's been around in the Wuyi Mountains for thousands of years? And the answer is no. This is a new varietal that was in 2003 given to the farmers, and it was developed at a research institute in Fujian province. They took about 40 years to develop this varietal. Wow, 40 years. What, they don't have very good scientific equipment? Their imagination wasn't very good? How come it took so long? In China, the sense of how to get new varietals onto the market is very different in a way than it is here. Here, we like speed, right? Let's get that GMO thing cranked up. Let's get out new corn varietal next year or the year after. Do we care that year number 1 is high yield and year number 2 is low yield? Nah, let's just get it out there. We'll fix that as we go along. Not how the Chinese do these things. The Chinese think about many, many things. The scientists think about many, many aspects. Because remember, if you wreck a peasant's life, whether it's unintentional or intentional, you have brought great misery to a village or set of villages, because most villagers live relatively on the edge. So if you give them a varietal that in year 1 and 2, oh man, this is producing great, I'm going to retire rich, and in year 3, oh, what happened? Or if you give them a varietal, wow, in the lab, this is really, really good. It produces a lot. It's really tasty. You give it to the peasants. It's really tasty. Let me think about this a minute. Maybe the bugs like it also, and your crop gets eaten up. Or worse, you have to illegally or sneakily get very dangerous pesticides to throw on it. Not good, not acceptable. So the Chinese, when they develop, I've been to the lab where they developed this, and it's really fascinating because first off, it's like a CIA black site, because there's no signs anywhere. You're driving around, where the heck is this lab? And you're looking around, there ought to be a lab here. And you pull up to this place that is the most indistinct place in the world. You pull up there and there's a fence that's got a padlock on it. There's no sign. And you're thinking, and the farmer I was with said, yeah, this is the place, I'm pretty sure. I'm thinking, okay, if you say so. I don't see any buildings. I see plenty of mountains, and I see some fields up there. And then somebody comes down and meets us. This is the place. It truly is the place. And this place was officially established in 1936-37. And so it's had this long old history. And the founder of this place died when he was 100, I believe, 10 years old. Really an interesting fellow. And over his life did many, many useful and great things for the tea industry. So one of the things he laid out as a principle is, let's not harm the peasants. Let's do all the testing and research before we really let the peasants have go at it. So they test not only for yield, they test also for resistance to bugs. They test for what season it's going to come into fruition. They test for how early in the year versus how late in the year, what water requirements. They test for everything. And during that testing, they really take a minimum of 7 years data and then do another 7 years of data. And they compare, they keep making adjustments. So most of these hybrids don't come to the market for 20 years because they then, in those last years, give them to peasants who agree, and they also give them subsidy. Here, please put this in. Let's do this together. Let's see how it processes. Let's see if you're happy. Let's see if the tea industry is happy. That's why this one took so long to come to market. 40 years. All right. So let's open the curtain a little bit. Who are the ancestors of this particular variety? The ancestors are Iron Goddess Light and Golden Osmanthus. Those two plants were hybridized together to create this particular variety. Now, right away, for those of you who've had Iron Goddess Light and Golden Osmanthus, all of a sudden you go to yourself, oh my God, I understand now why this tastes the way it does. Now, many of you haven't tasted it, so you're not at that point yet. But when you taste it, if you've had our Iron Goddess Light and our Golden Osmanthus, and you taste down into the tea, you'll get some hint about that. Why is there going to be a dramatic difference on top of that? Because the terroir in the Wuyi Mountains is so different. You're growing it on volcanic soil versus Iron Goddess Light, Golden Osmanthus, Southern Fujian, not volcanic soil, different profile. So you've got all of these things going on. What else do you have going on? You have processing. Now, we haven't started to talk about the processing. And I'm going to take 2 sessions to carefully go through the processing with you because there's a ton of information to cover. But I want to start out with this. In general, great Wuyi cliff tea takes 3 to 6 months to really process. Some processors wait a full year. A bunch of reasons, and we'll talk and get into those reasons. But I want you to know, this isn't a day or 2-day process. Now, you go to the south and you actually process Iron Goddess Light. It's all done in 2 days. It rests for 30 days and then you put it on the market. Very different. Golden Osmanthus, it's the same thing. 2-day process, boink, rest, go to the market. This is 6 months before this stuff comes to market at earliest. So what are they doing during this 6 months? What part of the process do I want you to focus on right now? The part of the process I want you to focus on is a later part in the processing modality. It's the roasting. So when you do the roasting, you have choices. It's just like when you bake up your pumpkin pie or sweet potato pie. All of you baked up your pumpkins and sweet potato pies, except my sister who got a great pecan pie. You baked up your pies and you make a key decision. What temperature am I going to bake this at? Oh, that's one part of the decision. How long am I going to bake this? So these farmers develop internal recipes. So your question might be, wait a minute, aren't all the recipes the same? And the answer would be no, they're not the same. It's by farmer. Why? If you go to an organic food store and you pick out, the really large nuts, you pick out organic pumpkin and organic spices, is that going to be the same as if you go to one of the big box stores and buy, the puny nuts, the spices which aren't organic, mass produced? Are those experiences at the end of the day going to be the same? The answer is absolutely not. They will not be the same. It's the same with the farmers, but instead of spices, what are they working with? Oh, they're working with mountain position. Mountain position. What's that? Well, you have some bushes growing on the east side of the mountain. You have some bushes growing on the west side. You have some at higher north, some, at the bottom south. Why does that make a difference? Well, you're in this mountainous area. Sunlight strikes the leaves in a different way. And as it strikes the leaves in a different way, it creates not only a different chemical configuration, it actually creates a different physical manifestation. Wait a minute, how is that possible? Think about it this way. If the bushes are facing the east and you're getting that eastern morning sun, what's happening to the opening process? Remember, comes up as a bud first, and then leaves come off that bud. They leaf faster. I suppose leaf is not a verb. Thank you for thinking that out loud so I could catch that. They come to a leaf faster. If you have the bushes on the west side, they're getting shade in the morning. They're coming to become leaves slower. So you have, and remembering that the farmers don't have a bunch of contiguous plots of land together. They have them all over the mountain. So when you're picking eastern facing bushes, you tend to have leaves that are more open, and that's going to create a difference in processing. And so the following question comes to mind. Well, what if when I'm doing my pumpkin pie, I take organic, but I'm short by 50%? I'm going to sneak this non-organic in. I'm going to rub them together. I'm going to mix them together. We'll do it that way. And the flavor is going to be the same, isn't it? Well, not necessarily. And mixing from these two positional sets of bushes, they won't do it unless they do it intentionally to influence the flavor intentionally. And that's something they have to experiment with over the years. That's not automatic. Typically, remembering, except for Scarlet Roll, and by the way, by the time this 3 weeks are over, the Scarlet Roll blending, you'll understand that very well. There isn't blending among these bushes, by and large. Sometimes they'll do it because they have done it over the years and they've gotten a certain effect that they want. But generally, and certainly when they pick, there isn't a blending. They pick the eastern first, get those all picked, go to the western, get those all picked, and they're segregated and labeled at the producing facility. So this is extremely labor intensive, and there's details. Remember, we're all about details. Details of the brewing, details of the processing, details of understanding the terroir. Oh, and by the way, next week, lots of scientific details, especially about how nitrogen may be one of the key elements to determine what the aroma and the taste are. And I have a sense I'm talking a long time. Oh, I am talking a long time. Okay, Team Master is waving frantically back there. Two messages in that: over talking, and secondly, very, very thirsty. So without further ado, by the way, I'm not done with this, but we are going to take an interlude so you can enjoy this. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to bring the beautiful, thirsty Tea Master to demonstrate how to brew Wondrous.
Okay, so we do the oolong, huh? It's the most people know. It's my favorite. So okay, we do clip tea, huh? this is my section. So if you like it, this is very simple. So very clean. Just this is the creative part. This John, this is how many years? It's the over.
We've had this pot for about 10 years.
Yeah, this long time. It's really, really good right now. It's okay. We do oolong, so it's clip tea. Same. The tea bag. Yeah, in your hands. So first time.
So you're watching this first
Yes.
time. You can either brew in clay or ceramic. I don't recommend brewing in glass or any other material. The clay will give you the best flavor. Ceramic is okay, and we've sent instructions for both with you.
If you have tea tray at home, if you like this real in Fujian or province in China, it's for oolong tea drink. First time, it's clay.
Is the tradition of tea experimentation widespread, or is this something that a small fraction of farmers do, or when circumstances arise?
Oh, this is a great question. How come and what is it that makes a farmer want to experiment? And so I should have modified farmer when I was explaining this to you, because not only are farmers experimenting, and I'll talk to you about why in a second, but more importantly, priest farmers are experimenting. So Buddhist and Taoist. And why is this? Because in their traditions, first off, they have the time to experiment. And when they experiment, they begin to share throughout the process. So that's a really interesting thing. So as they are experimenting, the results of their experiments don't remain a secret, whereas the results of farmer experiments tend to be kept as secrets. The farmers experiment more because of circumstance. So like I said, troops go through the area, apparently wreck the tea crop, and then there's issues.
这个你告诉他，我还是用 traditional brewing.
So this is a traditional type of pot using 200-degree water, heating the pot, and you should be paying attention to the details because these details are in many ways the same as small pot details. By heating and making sure that everything is as close to that 200 degrees as possible, because Wulongs need heat, period. You can't do them at 170. Of course, you can do anything you want, but it won't give you the same flavor. They expect, and the way they're produced, demand higher heat.
I used to traditional, the style, if you like, even large, I still used to. If looking at same, first time. So also, when you brew,
So hot water inside and out. This is 200-degree water, and your water should be set at 200 degrees.
When you say traditional, does that mean that farmers are using these kinds of
Same.
pots?
No, well, she
large.
said yes, and I said no. That's because we're answering
just size, just size
yes,
different.
that's the
But the
difference.
same,
It's the same
brewer.
type of pot.
Yeah,
They're
just
Yixing pots. It's different sizes.
Yeah, same, every same,
Same,
but just
yeah.
size different. 3 minutes, John.
Yes, and you set your timers for 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, you already poured the water in here.
Yes.
Wow, you are fast. Here I am talking and not paying attention. That's why I didn't have the timer set for 3 minutes. That's called inefficiency and understudy error. All right. So we're talking about the fact that processing, and we're focusing on certain aspects of the processing, make a huge difference. We're also focusing on terroir, Wuyi Mountains, cliff teas. So for those of you who are new to oolong teas, you know, you're thinking to yourself, okay, I understand, I think, oolong teas, semi-oxidized teas. And now I get this cliff tea appellation. Why? Where does that come from? It comes from the fact that in the Chinese poetry, they refer to this as yan cha. So cliff or rock teas, way to translate it. There are these mountains which rise straight out of the ground. They're volcanic in nature, and you've got bushes growing on the sides, on the tops, in the valleys. You have all of these things going on. These distinguish this style of tea. It's cliff tea. If anybody says, well, I get cliff tea, I get my cliff tea from Kenya, try not to laugh out loud. Don't even taste what they're offering up as cliff tea. Exit as judiciously as you can, quickly, because it ain't cliff tea. Cliff tea, by definition, only comes from the Wuyi Mountains. If somebody says, oh yeah, I have Taiwanese cliff tea, give them some space to clarify and say, oh, do you mean high mountain tea? Oh yeah, that's what I meant. Then you're good. You're good. Taiwan has high mountain tea. If they say, oh no, look, it says cliff tea. Probably not what you want to drink. In other words, it's going to be a mismatch between your expectations and what's produced. It might be very good tea, but it won't be a cliff tea. Cliff tea always implies minerality. It always implies some degree of roastiness. No exceptions. Now, when she was brewing, by the way, one of the things she did, and I should have called it out at the time she was doing it, is she shook the pot. She tried to wake up the leaves. When you shake that, by the way, 3 minutes is up. She's going to pour out the tea liquid separated from the tea leaves. There's an internal strainer in this pot, so she doesn't need a strainer. You're not trying to create bubbles. In fact, you're trying to do the opposite. So you pour on the side of the cup. Not in a hurry. You're just trying to get it smoothly out there. You notice there's so much grace in what the tea master does, creating that central vortex swirl. And look at that color. Isn't that color incredible? Your color, when you do it in a minute, ought to replicate this beautiful, beautiful color. Transparent. Look into this. So what do you do now? You got this very hot cup of tea. This is 200 degrees. Can you just chug this down? No. That would be a penalty, a tongue penalty, a penalty to the taste buds, because you'll scald yourself. You don't want to do that. So the first thing you want to do is carefully smell the leaves and take a look at the leaves. So you can kind of shake them around. Don't put your nose all the way in here, otherwise you'll burn your nasal passage. That's not a good thing either. So this gives you an opening round sense of what this tea might be like. And you're looking at the leaves, pretty uniform. You're looking whether they're uniform. Are they broken up? No, these are pretty whole. Do they have a variety of colors? Yes, this has a variety of colors. What does that tell you about the roast? I'll tell you in a minute. Okay, the second thing you do is you're going to take a 200-degree sip. Now, what is a 200-degree sip? It's a slight inhalation. It's not a blowing. It's not waving your hand over the tea to try and, in quotes, cool it down. Those are all bad steps to take because you're going to reduce the effectiveness of getting the initial aroma and getting the initial mouthfeel. Remember, aroma and mouthfeel are all linked together. They're not separate. All right. A small inhalation to just barely cover the tongue. 200 degrees, very, very careful. Okay, so we're entering the quality arena. What do I want to understand? Okay, want to understand where the dryness is. That's the first thing. I want to understand what sort of aftertaste, if any, am I going to perceive? And as I'm sitting here thinking about this, the other thing I want to understand is what sort of energetics are there? What, and by energetics, there's nothing mysterious about this. This is addressing an actual physical feeling in your body. Are you warming? Are you feeling warmth? Are you feeling a tingliness? Are you feeling something else? These things belong to the energetics. And so I want to get a second opinion here. Another 200 degree sip. Remember, I'm smelling this too. Wow. Rolling it around in my mouth. Now, I'm not only entering the quality arena, I'm thinking about aroma, I'm thinking about taste, because I've got to make an evaluation about that as well. I'm also thinking, and when I was in the quality arena, I was thinking about density. Is this thick? Is it thin? Is it subtle? All of these things which go into making a determination. Is this Cliff tea any good? All right, it's time for you to brew with the tea master. And you notice she always takes the time to make sure that the whole tableau is always set up correctly, because it's really herky-jerky if you don't take the time right in the beginning to set up all the elements of what you're going to be doing. And that's not good, because remember, we're in tea rhythm here, and tea rhythm has a kind of a uniformity, a motion to it that is steady, where you are present while this is going on. You must be present. You don't have to be anything, but it's best if you're present while this is going on. So she is putting 200 degree water both in the recipient cup, in the pot itself, and on the pot. And you put the water in the cup just to make sure there's no soap spots or anything else which can distract from the flavor that you want to understand. And she's taking a second look at the pot to make sure that there are no tea leaves from the first steeping left in there. And so she's taking bag number 1 right here. This has 6 grams of Wonderous in it. She's putting it in the pot, a hot pot, by the way. And this is what you should be doing, shaking it, smelling it, and shaking it again. So what she's trying to do is wake up the tea leaves. And you get the best results. Remember, do you have to do all of these tiny steps every single time? No, you're in control of your own destiny. However, if you want the best flavor, you will do all these steps. If you don't care about that, then you won't do all these steps. Now, when you notice when she pours in, she tries to not pour directly on the leaves. When you pour directly on the leaves, you flatten the flavor. So as best as possible, try not to pour directly on. Now, if you miss, does that mean you should throw it out and start over again? No, it does not mean that. But the aggregation of details matters. And if you're wanting the best possible flavor, these are the steps that you'll take in order to do this. It's really simple. All right. So you saw the brewing, and I know a couple of you today are brewing in a clay pot for the first time. And it's really exciting to do this because this clay pot, what I will tell you about this is as you do this over the years, the clay pot takes on the aroma, it takes on it becomes fully seasoned. So when there's no leaves or anything, you can open the pot and smell the cliff tea smell in here. So again, pot hygiene. Why is it we don't brew any other type of tea in here? Because most teas don't need that concentration of heat. That's number one thing. But the number two thing is, what if you brew a red tea in here? First off, the red tea is going to taste terrible because it'll be flat. But more than that, what's that going to do to the seasoning in the pot? You're going to pick up these other elements. It's going to disturb your ability to understand the cliff tea. All right, so let me make sure, oh, I did turn that on. So let's talk then about processing. And let's start at the very beginning. So the very beginning is picking, isn't it? But before you pick, you have to know where to pick. And by the way, if you pick somebody else's field, that's about the worst thing you can do. You don't do that. And so they have these people who every year know exactly whose field is where. And do they just send these people in the mountains with this leader? You pick here, you pick there. No. They have a Buddhist ceremony before anybody enters the field. And the ceremony blesses the leader, blesses the pickers. You know, this is a really elaborate thing. This area is steeped in tradition, and it's a relatively smaller area. And so they've maintained these traditions over the years. And Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucianist over time have lived in harmony in this area. So they bless, timer has gone off. So you're going to separate, or you're going to pour the tea out into the cup. Remember, not in a hurry, pouring on the side, not trying to create bubbles, not way above the cup, right adjacent to the cup, back connected with the cup.
Dark green and brown leaves of varied sizes emitted a sweetish meadow aroma in the bag and in the warm Yixing pot. Or I should say, and in the warm Yixing pot, the aroma is actually more vegetal. So we start with the dark green and brown leaves of varied sizes, giving this sweetish sort of sweet meadow scent in the bag, but in the pot, this vegetality comes out.
Great opening comment. In the bag, pre-putting in the pot, pre-applying heat, you have a slight hint of sweetness in the leaves. And they're green and brown. Somebody noted green and brown. Wow, that sounds to me like maybe the people who roasted this didn't do a good job. False. They did a great job. And I told you I was going to come back to this point. Light, medium, and high roast. They did a combination, all three of those roasts throughout. And the objective was to end up with a medium level roast, especially for this year's tea, because it would accentuate the aromas and flavors you're going to talk to me about. Now, the commentator also continued and said that the wet leaves went from that slight hint of sweetness to more vegetality in a meadow. And great comment, because the cliff teas in particular have change after change, and you think you've grokked it within the first minute. I will tell you, you have not grokked it, because it's going to change. Why does this change occur? This is 200-degree water. Can you just put a lot on your tongue and get all the flavors? Will your tongue protect you even against your will and kind of shut everything down until it's at a cool enough temperature? And the answer is yes to that. Yes.
And this taster also says, participant said, it was really hard based on the scent to wait the full 3 minutes for the brewing time.
I love this comment. So this taster reminds all of us that even though I don't frequently demonstrate as an understudy self-control, it is important to demonstrate self-control, because the rules are the rules, and we establish these through lots of experimentation, and they're going to give you the best flavor. And no matter how seductive that early aroma is, don't pour early.
The leaves in the bag gave a distinctive aroma that was so different from our last session, which was yellow tea. I could smell a bit of roastedness and sweetness and something akin to dark chocolate. And then the heated leaves were more floral. Wet leaves are still floral with a sweet woodiness to them. So roastedness, sweetness, and something akin to dark chocolate.
Okay, an opening dry leaves of roasted sweetness and hints of dark chocolate. They go to the wet leaves, and all of a sudden, boing, floral. Unbelievable. Did you and Xiaobei put a little bit of pollen on these leaves by chance? Answer is no, we did not. This is inherent in these leaves. Let's go back to the earlier discussion. Who did I say the forebears of this are? Iron goddess light, which has distinct floralness, and golden osmanthus, which also has a different type of floralness.
Another commenter says, the first impression is minerality and balanced roast, but then there's an element of airiness or sweetness that reminds me of teas from further south.
So I love this comment, because first impression was minerality and roast, and then that recedes to more sweetness and airiness, with a thought that, gosh, this does remind this particular commentator of oolongs from the south. And I like this comment because Wondrous presents in many different ways, but as it's presenting, it cannot disguise at the end of the day where its source or where its provenance is from.
The warm dry leaves, screen shifted here, the warm dry leaves had a chocolate aroma, and then the wet steep leaves had the florality that somebody else noted, but then the tea liquor has this nice caramel scent with a hint of florality in the background.
Love this comment. So we start out with dark chocolate in the warm leaves. In the wet leaves, we go to a little bit of florality. And then when we actually taste this thing, what is it? It's hints of caramel. I'm sorry, the aroma is hints of caramel from this thing. one of the reasons this tea is so popular, especially with first-time Cliff Tea drinkers, is because you have easy, in quotes, flavors to deal with. You have easy minerality. Some of the Cliff Teas have difficult minerality, edgy minerality. This also has medium roast, so you're not having to deal with, gosh, how do I taste down into the roast? This one, the roast immediately opens the door to whatever else is going on in this, and you all are picking this up. Yes.
The dryness from this tea seems to gravitate to the front of my tongue.
Dryness of this tea gravitates to the front of the tongue. For me, it's front and middle. Absolutely. I get that as well. And by the way, if some of you are thinking, oh no, I better not comment because I'm tasting this wrong because my dryness is at the back of the tongue. That's false. Everybody is genetically different, so you're going to experience it in different places. There isn't a wrong answer in terms of where the dryness is perceived.
Someone else gets off of the warm leaves a sort of roasted coconut aroma.
Oh, this is interesting. Off the warm leaves, a roasted coconut aroma. And so why do I like this? Because you're searching to try and put some substance to this and compare it to things that we know. And certainly the coconut has a nuttiness to it. And I absolutely get that with this. And a little bit later, I'll tell you how the Chinese would characterize this.
A taster finds this is a soft, mellow tea that coats both my palate and tongue with nice minerality and viscosity. For her, the drawing is more on her palate.
Soft minerality,
Yeah, soft, mellow tea.
a soft, mellow tea with light minerality and
Viscosity.
light viscosity. Love this comment because this is why this is a good entrance tea for entrance Cliff Tea for so many first timers who are doing this tea, because there's nothing which confuses you or turns you off in terms of, well, I got to stop here. That minerality is out of this world, or wow, that's heavy. That's not so mellow.
Another participant says there's a cleanness to the scent that makes him think that the water used was from a pristine mountain stream, although in his case, it came from the tap that was processed with charcoal. But there's a cleanness to the scent.
Love this comment. A cleanness to the scent, which reminds the commentator as if it's spring water, even though this isn't spring water. It comes from filtered tap water. And yes, there is an absolute cleanness, not only in the flavor, but even as you look at this, it just appears clean. It's a beautiful color. It's a beautiful feel on the mouth, and it's nice flavors that aren't, and aromas that aren't difficult to get your arms around. Now, you may say to yourself, well, I'm not a floral person, which means, oh, okay, maybe this is a little too floral to me. And that's okay. That's a judgment, a personal judgment and preference. Zero problem. But you have to recognize these things, say them out loud, including, well, I'm not a floral person. I want more heavy roast. And then we go to heavier roast. So this tea, we really wanted to start these sessions off because this is one of the easiest to approach. And yet it doesn't violate any of the principles of how Cliff Teas are made. And you have a background to this, which explains how it gets to this point. Because let's go to the Wuyi Mountains for a minute. There's lots of mysteriousness around the Wuyi Mountains. If you ever go there, and for those of you who've gone there, you know that this is true. And you've got all these hidden temples up there. When you get up in the morning, you see that fog and various shapes around the mountains. When you walk through the fields, everything is vibrant in terms of color, not only the leaves, but on the cliffs themselves. It's a really unique experience. This is where this tea is coming from. Yes.
The taster finds this tea is substantial. It's full, it's warming, it's refreshing, and it's a complete pleasure. She's getting a slight dryness and a warming to the core.
Full, warming, and substantial. Love this description because as easy as it is to understand, this does not imply that, oh, I can dismiss this now. Oh, no. You better take me seriously, is what this still says. I'm substantial. I've got lots of things going on. Yes.
Another taster seconds the energetic comments, and then somebody else says, hey, as I approach the end of my cup, my mental fog is clearing.
So as this commentator approaches the end of the cup, whatever fogginess they had is dissipated. It's gone. It's cleared. Yes.
Another taster says that she would add calming as an energetic quality to tea. She'd had a hectic morning before the session, and she's has been feeling a calming quality to this tea.
Love this comment. So this is linked also with the substantialness of this tea. The substantialness of this tea does bring a calming. It certainly brings calming to me. And from an energetics, people mentioned a minute ago, the warming. I'm warm. I'm very warm. And I'm warm upper body. My extremities are warm. I'm just feeling good drinking this tea. So you may ask, as several people do when they come in, when is a good time to drink this tea? Well, anytime you need that calming feeling, it's a good time. Anytime you need that warming feeling, it's a good time. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe just any time is a good time. So if you like this flavor, any time would be the right answer. And let's go back to that substantialness, because I really want to focus on that for a minute, because this is so substantial. It's almost like you're eating something, because my stomach feels foolish as I'm drinking this. And that's a great feeling. It's not only calming, but it's as if I'm having a little snack.
Another participant also now is getting the delicate florality on the wet leaves. And another taster says, hey, sipping this tea, I can imagine that as the fog clears, the barbarian army will find themselves surrounded by tea drinkers, and they will jump from their horses and run back home. And the downside, of course, is what do we do with all those horses? But you know.
Great comment. Great set of comments. So this last comment is very interesting, because for this particular commentator, drinking this tea clears out the fog. And as the fog is cleared out, all those dark forces of Mordor are surrounded by all the light forces of tea drinkers. And those Mordorites are finished. Now, maybe I said it slightly different than you did, but I believe that that was the sense of it.
Absolutely. And he has a solution for all the horses. Transport tea on the tea horse road. That's what the horses are good for. Now the barbarians are gone.
Now that the barbarians are gone, put them on the tea horse road. Great commentary. I believe that this commentary reflects a deep appreciation of this tea. And again, deep appreciation doesn't say you love or not love, but you certainly understand and you've taken the tea rhythm. And I have a feeling, oh yes, I have a feeling that I'm about to overtalk. I already have overtalked. So today was really important because this is the opening round, and we wanted this opening round to set a bar for you. And we wanted to give you initial background about oolong teas. You got the very beginning of processing. In other words, we're blessing everybody. We're making sure that we pick the right fields. We're knowing whether it's a western facing field or an eastern facing field or a northern facing field. We're not mixing things. Next week, we're still not going to mix things. We're going to go and we're going to examine what they do with these 80 to 100 and, excuse me, I don't have that right. It's 160 to 200 pound baskets that they carry from the mountains into the production facilities. By the way, when they do it on poles, 40 pounds typically on each basket, and it's 2 poles, so that's 80 plus 80, 160 to 200 pounds. And they're going as fast as they can in order to get the tea leaves at the production facility to make sure that they experience as little disturbance from between picking to getting to the production facility. Now, as you know, the understudy has no self-control, and this has been demonstrated many times. So this is part of the no self-control. However, this has been a very fun session for me and for Xiaobei, and we're glad we're off to this great start. Be prepared next week to have your dictionaries and science books all out, because we're going to get into the weeds. We'll finish the processing. We'll talk about what scientists are saying is the most important steps to achieve the aromas and flavors. In the meantime, what are your responsibilities during this great holiday season? They're to stay healthy, and we'll see you next week when we do Supernova. Have a great week. Y'all take care now.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.